Welcome to episode 1 of the Faith Sports Leadership Podcast with Ryan and Drew Lutz. I am one of your hosts, Ryan, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host and brother, Drew Lutz. Drew, how you doing today?
Can't complain, man. Beautiful day. Enjoyed my evening. It's great.
Awesome. Cool. Well, if this is your first time joining us, which it probably is because this is our first episode, just wanted to let you know why we're doing this podcast. It's honestly something that Drew and I have been doing for our entire lives. We've just never recorded it. We've talked sports, we've talked faith, we've talked leadership as we shared a bedroom growing up as brothers. And now that we are 1,000 miles apart, we decided to continue this conversation, have some accountability, and record it and see if it can help encourage or impact anyone else that way. So it's Faith Sports Leadership Podcast. We will talk about faith here at the first portion of the podcast. We're going to talk about sports in the second portion, where we're going to be breaking down college football for this upcoming season. And then we're going to be ending with a quick leadership nugget that I'm really excited to talk quickly about. But to dive on in, Drew, we are going to be diving right into our faith topic, which is about for 5 minutes. So we understand that not everyone is where we are in our faith journey. And so if you want to, I encourage you to stay. But if you want to fast forward to about the 5-minute mark and we'll be finished up. But I would encourage you to stay because this is a really encouraging verse. We're going to be diving into one verse. It's from Galatians chapter 5, and it's verse 14. It says this: "For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command, love your neighbor as yourself." I'm going to read that one more time. It's Galatians 5:14. "For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command, love your neighbor as yourself." Now, Drew, I'm just going to break this down real quick, then I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on this verse. But Galatians, it's this letter that this guy named Paul is writing to this church in Galatia, talking about, what direction they should be heading. The way that they should be living, what they should be pursuing in their lives, and amidst the chaos of the world and the culture that they were living in. And he just kind of broke it down pretty simple, man. The most important thing that you can do with your life is to love your neighbor as yourself. I think two things are important there. One, he says, love your neighbor as yourself. That means you have to love yourself. I've worked in student ministry for a long time, and I know that how hard it is for especially teenagers, college students, young professionals, how easy it is to just be someone that doesn't love yourself. You think negative thoughts about yourself, and honestly, it's I've been there. I know what that's like, and I'd love to connect with you if you're going through that right now. But just the reality of the situation is that if you have breath in your lungs, God has a reason for your life, and so for you to talk poorly about yourself, for you to hate certain aspects about yourself, is actually to be hating some of God's creation, and you wouldn't want to do that. And so I would encourage you, man, there's aspects, and I'm actually excited. It's kind of tied together. I didn't even plan on it, but our leadership kind of ties in with this whole thing, our leadership nugget. But loving yourself is important because you were created in the image of God. And so that's important. And then loving your neighbor as well. Imago Dei, created in the image of God, Imago Dei. What we need to recognize is that not only were we created in the image of God, but our neighbor was created in the image of God too. And they might not think the same way that we do. They might not believe the same things that we believe. They might think that the Bible that we read in the morning, the Bible that we go to church for on Sundays, like they might think that's nothing. They were still, according to God's word, created Imago Dei in the image of God. And so love your neighbor as yourself. You got to love yourself, and you also got to love your neighbor because we all were created in the image of God. Drew, what thoughts do you have on that verse, man?
Yeah, a lot of different thoughts. Yeah, I think you have to love yourself first so that you can love others. But there's a lot of people who don't love themselves. And I think so often we look at this verse and we love our neighbor when it makes us look good or when it's convenient. But like going through our everyday, like random people who you may not know or interact with, like asking how they're doing, seeing how their day is going, that can make their day if they're struggling to love themselves. So I think loving your neighbor as yourself first, like you mentioned, you have to love yourself so that you can love others. But it's something that's been challenging me is to just love people even when it's out of my convenience. Just being intentional with making an effort to just ask people how they're doing, because that might help them with whatever they're going through, and you don't even know their story.
Yeah, that's good, man. Love people, even when it's out of your convenience. For those of you listening, if you don't know, if we haven't had the chance to meet you yet, I'm a pastor. So this type of stuff's really important to me. But Drew's actually a college basketball coach at a public school, and so he loves coaching basketball, and he's looking to bring Jesus into every aspect of his life, whether it's explicitly talking, doing Bible studies, going to church, that type of stuff, or it's implicitly the way he's living, the way he's leading, the way he's being a husband, that type of thing. And so, yeah, that's good. Love people even when it's not convenient to you. That's good. Galatians 5, I'm just going to read it one more time. Galatians 5, verse 14. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. My challenge for you this week is, man, find your neighbor. It doesn't have to be the person living in the apartment next to you. It doesn't have to be the person in the house next to you or down the road. Your neighbor could be the person that cut you off on the way to work that you want to say some things to, but instead you're gonna respond the way Jesus would respond, with a little bit of love as well. So that's my challenge this week. Let's find our neighbor and look to love them well. So that is our faith aspect of the Faith Sports Leadership Podcast. Now we're going to be diving into the sports aspect of this podcast. And to do that this week in particular, we're going to be focusing solely on college football. I mentioned maybe we'll bring up some in future episodes. We're going to talk about multiple different topics, not just one particular topic. But this week, with it being week 1 of college football, we have week 0 happen. We saw some great games. Georgia Tech beating Florida State. We saw some other good games with some smaller schools, but we're really excited about where we are with week 1 of college football. And just a disclaimer, Drew and I are both diehard Michigan fans. And so if you bring up Connor Stallions, we're just not going to listen to you whatsoever. But we're going to be talking about college football here today. So, Drew, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to bring up a few categories that we're going to talk about. Then we're going to talk about our final 4 predictions for the college football playoff. We know it's a 12-team playoff this year, but we're just going to be focusing on our final 4 playoff predictions. And then we're going to make a couple picks for this week for the Saturday slate, the Sunday slate, and I think we even have a Monday game in there as well. So we're going to do our predictions. We're going to record our predictions throughout the entire season and see who comes out on top. It's our own mini version of College Game Day, minus the money. So here it is, sports. First category that we're going to be talking about, Drew, is who is 1 or 2 breakout teams for you. This is not necessarily a team that's going to go undefeated, but it's a team that's going to step onto the scene. It's going to have some lower expectations. It's going to exceed those expectations, and people are going to start to notice.
So the breakout team that I chose was SMU. They are making the jump to the ACC, won the American Conference last year. They got Florida State at home. I think they can get that one. And then their toughest road game, I think, is going to be Louisville. So I think, although they're jumping up to the ACC, I think they can make some immediate impact.
Yeah, that's a good one. Their quarterback, which I'm blanking on his name right now, he can sling it. And so SMU, is that who you said?
Mm-hmm.
SMU, if they could get the ACC is going to be tough, man. My breakout team also actually comes from the ACC. One of them comes from the ACC, but so my breakout team will be competing with yours, SMU. I have Miami as my breakout team because I wasn't going to put them as my breakout team. They're a top 25 team. They're 19th or so in the preseason rankings. I'm a big fan of Cam Ward, obviously. That way, he played at Incarnate Word when Drew was playing basketball at Incarnate Word, transferred to Washington State, had a great year this past season, and now is at Miami. I think he's going to be great. I think they're just loaded with talent. I think that they're kind of at a place where it's the ACC's up for grabs. It was Clemson's for so long. This past season it was Florida State's, and so I think that it's still kind of up for grabs for who's going to take the reins, especially with adding these new teams in. And I think Miami's just got the talent to do it. And I think they got some dogs in their team. So Miami's my team to break out that way. I also wanted to mention another team that I don't know if it's just the hype around them, if it's the superstar players, if it's the coach, but I think Colorado is going to have a great year. I think the Big 12 is it's a good conference, but I think, man, you watch Shedeur Sanders throw the football. He's an NFL quarterback. Travis Hunter, if he can stay healthy people forget that Travis Hunter got hurt last year after they had been on a hot start. he gets hurt in the Colorado State game, I believe it is, and I mean you lose not only your best cornerback and secondary player, but you lose your best offensive weapon as well at the receiver position. So I think, man, if he can stay healthy the whole year, I think their offense especially is going to be probably one of the top offenses in the country and in the Big 12. But I also think their defense is much improved with a new defensive coordinator. Got an NFL type mindset. You got NFL talent on the defensive line as well now. So Colorado, I'm not saying they're going to make the playoff, but their over under was ridiculously low in my opinion for them having two possible top 5 NFL draft picks, including their quarterback. So
So
my two teams were Miami and Colorado.
so the over under for them was 5.5. All right. So you're taking the over on that, I'm assuming.
I would hammer if the over and unders at 5.5. I would, if I was a betting man, I would hammer the over because there's no way that team's not going to make a bowl game. I think they're going to be closer to the 8-9 win games. Possibly if they can sneak a couple close ones down the stretch, especially, I could see them getting double digit wins. And in a competitive Big 12, I mean, there's going to be a lot of wins and losses. I don't know if there's going to be an undefeated team run through. And so at that place, if they can get to 10 or 11 wins, make it to the Big 12 championship game, then we're talking possibility of automatic bid to the playoffs. So I just think when you got big time players make big time plays, and I think that Colorado's got that. So my two teams would be Miami because I love Cam Ward, and I think they got some dogs in their team. And then I got Colorado.
I I think they're a very fun team to watch. I love Shador and Travis Hunter and what they can do. Their defense, I still think struggles, and that's going to hurt them. But yeah, a fun, exciting team. I do like when they're winning because there's more hype around them, and some people get upset with that. But I think it's fun and makes college football more entertaining for sure.
Yeah, I agree. They have a tough test. Week one, for the audience listening, we're recording this on Friday, so the Thursday night games have already happened. So Colorado beat North Dakota State. That's a tough game, man. North Dakota State have won 6 of their last 7 games against FBS programs, including, I mean, a Big Ten win against Minnesota, including a couple other Power 5 wins as well in there. So that's a tough game. I don't know if people fully realize that. And then week 2, they play against Nebraska and Dylan Raiola and Matt Rule, who was on my list as well, possible breakout teams. I just think the Big Ten's too deep. So, so at Colorado, they got the work cut out for them. I might look like an idiot, but man, I would much rather bet on Deion Sanders than bet against him. So that's my breakout team. Now we're going to be going to letdown team. Who's a team that has some high expectations that you think are going to let people down?
So the team I had for this is because I feel like it's an every year thing, and they're picked super high at the beginning of the year. I have Penn State, which I think people think they're going to be different this year. They'll make the playoffs, but I just think it's the same kind of thing every year. They struggle to score the ball, and then they get into that Big Ten play, and they start losing more and more. And I don't think, I know they have a new offense coming in and all that, but I think the hype is it's Penn State's letdown team for me.
Yeah, I can see that happening. The only thing I will argue against that is Penn State. Their big issue the past few years has been they lose to Michigan, they lose to Ohio State, and then they're completely out of the conversation. With the new 12-team playoff, I mean, you lose to Michigan, you lose to Ohio State, there's a good chance you're still getting into the playoff as a 10, 11, 12 seed. So there's that going for them. I think that they do have a lot of talent. I think Drew Aller is a great quarterback. He's like the number 1 quarterback coming out of high school. He's got the talent. They got some good backs. James Franklin's a winner. He won at Vandy. He's won at Penn State a lot. But I see what you're saying, to where they kind of have to prove themselves before they can really be anointed, which it seems like they're kind of already being anointed as one of the tops.
Right, and I feel like most years they have a great quarterback supposedly coming in, and then a hyped up running back. Which, I mean, when Saquon was there, I mean, he was real deal, but it just seems like the same story, and that's why I chose them as my letdown team.
Yeah, that's good letdown team. We have them on our list of games to pick because they open up at West Virginia, which I don't know if it's Pat McAfee influence or what, but West Virginia might have themselves a squad this year. So that's an interesting pick. Penn State, that's a good one. I like that. For me, my pick for letdown team is actually the number 4 team in the country, the Texas Longhorns. And it's not because I don't think they're talented enough. It's not because I don't. I love Steve Sarkisian's a great coach. I love Quinn Ewers as quarterback. I think he's good. I think he's smart that he transferred away from Ohio State so he could join a different program because I'm not an Ohio State fan. I'm just kidding that way. But I think that there's just a lot of noise around Texas football. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of heat in the kitchen. And I think that them joining the SEC is going to be tough in and of itself. But them joining the SEC with a tough football fan base in Texas that doesn't count winning seasons as the standard, but winning championships is a standard. But then also in the quarterback room, I mean, Quinn Ewers is a potential first round draft pick this upcoming year. But if he struggles even a little bit, it's going to get really loud for Arch Manning to come in and the prime, the Manning kid, that type of stuff. People are going to be shouting his name. And I could just see if there are some bumps in the road early in the season, which again, they play Michigan early in the season. They have an SEC schedule now, which is like, it's a grind. I could see them losing a couple of close ones, it getting real loud, and them kind of falling apart late in the season. I mean, they're fourth. They made the college football playoff last year, deservingly so. Like they're a great team, but the SEC's hard. I mean, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart have been running it for quite some time, but it's a deep SEC now. And I think with the addition of Oklahoma and Texas, it's going to be even deeper. So I think Texas could just get mixed up in the run of the tough SEC season, and they might still make the playoffs. I just don't see them finishing top 4 in the country, given their schedule.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you mentioned Quinn Ewers transferring away from Ohio State. Man, I've been convicted this past week. We got Ohio State. So for people that don't know, Ryan and I are huge Michigan fans. We despised Ohio State and Notre Dame growing up. We got Notre Dame doing that Peacock series. It's hard not to like them watching that. And you got Ohio State out there baptizing, preaching the word of God. I mean, God was right when he said, love your enemies.
Yeah, that's very true. I was talking with a friend who knows I'm a diehard Michigan fan and just said, man, I will never cheer for Ohio State on the football field, but those dudes are awesome. Travion Henderson is a dude. He's awesome. And I can't remember the receiver's name, Bab, I think his last name is, who is a great receiver, just had some injury. And he's up there, man, preaching like a preacher on a public schools campus. It's absolutely incredible to see what they're doing. And then, yeah, I mean, Notre Dame, I live in South Bend. And so it's easy to not like Notre Dame sometimes. But I tell you what, with Marcus Freeman, he's a hard dude not to get behind. He's a guy, you listen to him talk, you hear him give interviews, you hear him in the locker room, and you just want to run through a brick wall. So, yeah, I get what you're saying there. It's hard not to like both those teams, even as Michigan fans. Maybe it's because we won a national title, so we can be a little more lax with that. So those are our letdown teams. Now, Drew, we're going to talk about our Heisman favorite, who we think are going to win the Heisman Trophy this year. Who you got, buddy?
So I got 3. I'm starting with the guy you just kind of talked down on, Quinn Ewers. I think he's got that Colt McCoy kind of gamer-esque to him, where he's just gonna find ways to win. And I mean, I had them in my Final Four because of him and his toughness. So
yeah, he's definitely a gamer, man. He's a guy I like him a lot. I think he's going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. I just think there's a lot of outside. That's why I went against that. There's just a lot of outside noise. In a letdown season for Texas is losing 2 or 3 games, which can happen in a tough SEC. So I like Quinn Ewers. I like him a lot. It's a good pick. Who else you got?
And then I had Jalen Milroe. I think he's just a playmaker. He's got some experience now. I think he's going to have a good year. And then the last one, this is a hopeful one, Donovan Edwards. I hope he just kills it for Michigan this year. We go back to back. We get more T-shirts. It's going to be awesome.
Okay. I'll say Milroe. Yeah, I think that's a given. I think not only is he talented and skilled enough, he's got the experience playing under Saban, leading under Saban, but now he's stepping into a Kalen DeBoer offense, which DeBoer, like when he was at Indiana as the offense coordinator, he had Michael Penix playing at a Heisman level play. Like beating Penn State and with the dive and all. Like Penix was really good. He just kept getting hurt. Then he goes to Washington and he wins a ton, but then also gets Penix up in the Heisman conversation again. So I think his offense will set him up for that as well. The Donovan Edwards, man, I hope so. I think I don't know. I think it might be running back by committee this year. I hope Donovan Edwards can stay healthy. I think he's going to have a long, great NFL career. He's built like an NFL running back. He's a big play guy, but also can make for little plays as well. I'm interested to see who the Michigan for so long, for the past few years especially, has been a 1-2 punch in the backfield, whether it's Haskins and Corum or Corum and Edwards and that type of thing. So I'm interested to see what that's going to look like because I think that we have the talent. But I'm interested to see what that 1-2 punch will look like for this year. But I mean, bold on you, man. A running back, Donovan Edwards, going for the Heisman. Hey, it can happen. For me, I only have one guy I want to bring up. I think Milrow was probably on mine as well. The one guy I think is a shoe-in would be Oregon's Dylan Gabriel. I think he's going to have a stellar season. I think Oregon and Georgia are going to be the winningest teams this year. And Carson Beck, I think, could be a Heisman talk thing. But if you're going to compare Gabriel and Beck, I think Gabriel's going to put up the numbers that you're going to need to kind of outstride Carson Beck in the regular season that way. So I think Dylan Gabriel in the Dan Lanning style, like the toughness, the leadership, that type of thing, after coming from a Venables in Oklahoma, where he's learning toughness, leadership, after coming from UCF, where he's learning toughness, like he's kind of ridden the wave of college football. He's been coached by some great coaches, and I think that the offense he's going to be able to run is going to be great. So mine's Dylan Gabriel. I think Carson Beck could be up there. Milrow definitely for sure. But yeah, I think it's Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel. Any thoughts?
Oh, good pick. I think they're going to be great this year. They're going to be tough to stop. Offensively, they're going to be high powered, moving the ball up and down the field. I think he's a perfect guy for that kind of style that they'll need, and I think they'll be super successful. So, good pick.
Appreciate it. We're so good at debating. You should be like Skip and Shannon on here. All right, so now we're going to do favorite players to watch. We're going to name 3 players that we love to watch, and these aren't necessarily guys that are going to put up Heisman like numbers. Not necessarily guys that are going to be the winningest players, but they're guys that when we turn on the TV and their team's playing, we're going to turn it on so that because we can watch them. Drew, who are your 3?
Well, you mentioned one guy already, Travis Hunter. I mean, even last night, just watching it, he's just contagious on the field. He's offense, defense, makes big plays, has all the dances, fun, just so fun to watch. And then the second guy I had was Will Johnson for Michigan.
Mm.
Defense, he's just flying around, makes plays. He made so many big plays last year, and he's got the buffs, the glasses every turnover, and he kind of started that thing. So that was fun. And then my third player, we also mentioned him, Cam Ward. Like you said, he was at Incarnate Word while I was there, and I would go to those games. He's run around, scrambling, breaking all these tackles, and he'll throw like 50 yards down the field, dot. Just he's so fun to watch, and his creativity and just elusiveness is just. I think he's going to be an NFL quarterback, and I think I'm hoping he makes some noise this season, and that starts tomorrow. So yeah.
There we go. Okay, those are some good picks. I think you got two DB. Well, I guess Travis Hunter plays receiver and DB. So those are some fun players to watch. I agree. For me, I broke it down. Number 1, I have a Michigan man, Mason Graham, defensive line. I think he could have. I mean, he's an interior defensive lineman more so than an exterior. So be a little different than Aiden Hutchinson, who was there a few years ago. But I think he can have a similar type season. I think that with the new teams coming into the Big Ten, he's going to be able to just show them how Big Ten football is played. I think the defensive line is incredible, but I think Mason Graham, starting with him, he's just fun to watch. Number 2, I would say, is the running back duo at Ohio State this year. And I don't like watching Ohio State football a ton because they typically look really good and it stresses me out for the last game of the season. But man, they are going to be fun to watch. I'm interested to see how their transfer quarterback from Kansas State is going to be able to do in Ohio State under a Chip Kelly offense. But I'm excited to watch how these 2 running backs, Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, do in a Chip Kelly offense that is just designed to make running backs shine. I think that if they both can stay healthy, I think that they are going to be in for a great season. It's going to be really fun to watch. And then my last guy that I'm going to enjoy watching is actually also one of my sleeper Heisman picks is the USC quarterback Miller Moss. Opening up the first game of the year against LSU, thinks he's got a chance to put on a show on the big stage. And I think that, I mean, obviously, I've only seen his high school film and then his game in the bowl game last year where he balled out. But I just think that he is a type of guy that will step into Lincoln Riley's offense and just do what Lincoln Riley wants him to do, which is phenomenal. Caleb Williams, I think, was just so talented that there was this element with USC the past 2 years that it was like it was the Caleb show, and sometimes it was a Lincoln show, and sometimes they didn't necessarily go hand in hand because Caleb was so good. Like it's there's so much greatness there, and only one greatness can really prevail. I think with Miller Moss, I think he's really talented. He's a great quarterback, but I think what he's going to be able to do is take Lincoln Riley's offense and run it to a T and run it to perfection. And when people do that, they tend to win Heisman trophies. And so Miller Moss is going to be a fun guy to watch at USC. It's going to be interesting to see how they jump into the Big Ten, how they battle against LSU in Week 1. So that is those are my three. But then also I'm adding Miller Moss to my Heisman hopefuls as well. Any other thoughts before we head into our college football playoff predictions?
No, fun picks. I think we're going to have some disagreement coming up here now that I hear your USC picks. So I'm excited.
All right, let's head on in. All right, college football playoff predictions for the year. We'll talk our final four. If you want to add any extra teams that you think will get in that might surprise some people, that'll be good for the podcast. You can talk that as well. But we'll go through our final four right now. Drew, starting with you.
Man, mine, the more I thought about it and I broke it down, it's going to sound pretty boring because they're pretty powerhouse teams. But of course, number one, and they're winning it all, I got Michigan. Number two, I had Texas, like I mentioned. Number three, I had Bama. And number four, your boy Dylan Gabriel, I had Oregon.
Okay, so, would you say that's the order of what you think, like ranking wise, they're going to finish, or is that just like we're no order, just those four teams?
No order, but number one is number one.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll tell you mine. Then we'll discuss. I got Georgia, Oregon, 1-2, and then I have Ole Miss from the SEC, and I have Miami, Florida. So those are my four teams. Let's discuss, and then we'll talk about other teams that we think are going to get in as well.
Yeah. So Ole Miss, let me hear your thoughts on that one.
I mean, this is it's Lane Kiffin's year. Like he's been in it for so like he's a really good coach. He's had some tough breaks, some tough luck. I mean, he recruits really well, obviously, but I think he's a really good coach. I think he's got a really good team. Jackson Dart at quarterback is going to be I think have a decent season. I think that they just have a lot of talent. He's done a great job of bringing in experienced players through the transfer portal on the defensive side that I think is going to help propel them. Then I also think the depth of the SEC, which I mentioned earlier, might hurt Texas. I think is actually going to help propel Ole Miss because I think they'll be really good in close games. And so when teams are tired, they'll be able to finish strong and win those tough ones as well. So I think Ole Miss is in. I think for Lane Kiffin, it's kind of, I mean, his mentor Nick Saban is gone. I don't know if he's actually his mentor. He worked for him for a couple of years as an OC, but now it's his time to shine. I mean, I still think it's Kirby's conference, but I think that there needs to be that 1A and 1B, and I think that Lane Kiffin could step into that role.
Yeah, surprising on my picks, I had Georgia out of it. I have them. It's so tough because they're so dominant, but I have them losing in that Elite Eight. Close game, just someone's going to pull it out though. And I love the star power of the four that I have with you got Michigan, you got not Georgia, you got Oregon with Dylan Gabriel. We got Bama with Jalen Milroe. I think he's going to make some big plays in that playoff. And then Texas, like I mentioned, my Heisman winner. I think Texas is going to be really good. They do things right over there, and I think Texas will come back hungry.
Yeah, I mean, clearly I disagree with you on Texas. I think Texas might make the playoff. I don't think they get very far. I think that you not having Georgia in the final, Georgia's winning the championship, in my opinion. I think people forget how good they actually are because they lost a really close game in the SEC championship to Alabama, and for whatever reason, that knocked them out of the playoff contention completely. I think people forget about that. I think Kirby's too good of a coach. As long as they stay healthy. I mean Carson Beck's great. They're going to have great weapons on the outside and the running back, but they're also just bigger and better. Like they're an NFL team playing college football. I just think people forget that because they lost one game last year to a tough Alabama team. So I like that you have Alabama in there. I think they're going to have a good year. I think DeBoer is a winner. I think that with just the transfers out and the transfers in, it's going to be tough for them to get super far. I think that DeBoer is going to build something to be great, but so I like that. Anyone else that you have in the college football playoff that you might be worth mentioning? I'll say I have Notre Dame making the college football playoff this year. I think that their schedule's somewhat not easy, but it's doable. I think they open up at Texas A&M, which is going to be tough. They can win that, and they should be able to win the rest of their games. And they bookend the season, I believe, at USC. I could be wrong. I should have that pulled up. So they have kind of a bookend tough games, but in the middle, if they can win the games that they're supposed to win, and then win one of the two really tough games, and I think they get in. They play a Florida State team who's going to be tough once they get things figured out. But I see Notre Dame making the playoff.
Yeah, no, I had Notre Dame in as well. I think it's Marcus Freeman's time. I think it's his third season. Yeah, I think couple of rough go abouts, but I think this is Notre Dame's year for making back to where they're supposed to be.
All right, there we go. Well, we will talk more on that college football. We'll update our college football rankings. You said you have Michigan winning it all. I have Georgia winning it all. Final four for you is Michigan, Alabama, Oregon, and Texas. For me, it is Georgia, Oregon, Miami, and Ole Miss. So those are our final four predictions. I have Georgia winning it all. Drew has Michigan winning it all. Now we're going to make picks for this week. It's a Saturday, Sunday, and Monday slate. Some of the key matchups. We're going to go through the line. Drew, we got Clemson at Georgia. Who are you taking?
I got Georgia in a close one.
Okay, I got Georgia blowing them out a little bit. All right, Penn State at West Virginia.
I mentioned Penn State was my letdown team, and I got West Virginia at home. Garrett Green, quarterback, is going to make some noise.
They're a fun team to watch. I think that West Virginia will cover. I think it's last time I checked, it was 10-point spread, maybe 7.5. But I think Penn State's going to play. I think Penn State's going to be good at winning close games. So that's a good pick on you. Miami at Florida. This game, last time I checked, it was only 2.5 spread toward Miami against an unranked Florida team. Who you got?
This has been tough for me because living down here in Florida, I'm hearing all the two-sided things, and my guy Ty Brooks going to be mad at me for this, but I'm going with Miami and Cam Ward.
There you go, Miami. I got Miami winning as well. I think that I hope Billy Napier does well down there in Florida. I think Miami is just a really, really good team, as I have them in my Final Four. So there's that. All right, USC versus LSU down there or over there in Las Vegas. Who you got winning that game?
LSU, Brian Kelly. I got Garrett Nussmeier. I think he's a great quarterback, and I think LSU is going to win that one.
All right, friend. You and I disagree on this. I think, man, Miller Moss, he's the guy. Better watch out. He's coming onto the stage. I think he's going to win. I think Garrett Nussmeier is a great quarterback as well. Brian Kelly's a good coach. But I think, man, I like Lincoln Riley to win this game with USC, to step back onto the stage, into the Big Ten, saying, hey, we just took down an SEC school. All right, and then last but certainly not least, we got Boston College at Florida State. Florida State heavy favorites in this, but just had to put this one on there so that we could get 5.
Yeah, I had Florida State bounce back win.
Yeah, I have Florida State bounce back win as well. I hope DJ Uiagalelei can pull that off. I hope I said his name right. I hope he starts pulling things together. Rooting for the guy. He's had a tough go around. Clemson, tough go around. Good season at Oregon State, but then just tough go around. First game in Ireland. So I hope he turns it around as well. So we'll record those, go through our rankings or our record next week, and hopefully both of us can come out on top by the end of the year. All right, now that is our sports section. Again, this is the Faith Sports Leadership Podcast. We open up with talking about our faith, talk about a big chunk of sports in the middle, and then we end with a short leadership nugget as well. And so we're going to actually read a quote from C.S. Lewis, the author, and what he says that I think is one of the most important leadership quotes that we can read and it is this: humility is not thinking less of yourself; it's thinking of yourself less. Real quick, Drew, I'll say something. I'd love to have you share some stuff, and then we'll finish up. Humility is not thinking less of yourself; it's thinking of yourself less. I think this actually ties in really well with what we were talking about at the very beginning. The most important command is to love your neighbor as yourself. Again, talking about how you have to love yourself. I think, man, humility in it of itself. We all want to work for humble leaders. When you talk to someone, you say, "Hey, what are you looking for in a coach? What are you looking for in a leader?" Humility is often something that comes up. But what we don't want is a coach or a leader that thinks that really downly about themselves. We don't want someone who's going around moping saying, "Oh, I can't do this, I can't do this." Actually, we want someone who's optimistic about what they can do as a team, but they're just not thinking about themselves all the time. They're thinking about others. I think that that's what the best leaders do. They think about others first. See Jesus do that all the time as he's walking through towns and villages, stopping and interrupting his schedule to heal people and all that stuff and teach people. Humility is not thinking less of yourselves; it's thinking of yourself less. Drew, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, just some quick. I think so often, especially when I have problems and I'm just constantly focused on myself and my situation, what helps me a lot is when I look to help others. And I think that just it's contagious. And then it puts in perspective, maybe your problem isn't as big as you think it is. You're focused on others, maybe they're going through something even more. But it definitely helps me with perspective, and just it makes you happier too, focusing on others and not just consumed with yourself. And plus, like you mentioned, people want to be around that. It's a healthy environment and it's contagious to be around.
Yeah, that's good, man. It is contagious. I love being around humble people and humble leaders, especially that are people that they believe. Like I make this like Jesus was a humble leader. Jesus didn't walk from town to town, village to village, thinking like, "Oh man, I'm just the son of a carpenter. I'm just this. I'm just that." No, man. I bet. I mean, people were drawn to him. I bet he was walking with some gusto because he knew who he was and he had confidence who he was. But he was using that gusto not to bring people to look more at him, but he was bringing that gusto to look at people and see what they needed. So I think as leaders, and we all are leaders, I think as leaders, we can utilize that. So hopefully that encourages you a little bit. Hopefully our sports takes weren't too terrible. We try to stay a little bit away from our bias with Michigan, my bias with Liberty as an alum. But hopefully that was some encouragement to you. Look for who your neighbor is, how you can love them well. Make sure you cheer on Miller Moss because he's going to win the Heisman probably this year. And number 3, don't think less of yourselves, folks. Just maybe think of yourself a little less. So glad you joined us. Drew, anything else before we close out?
Now, this is awesome, man. Glad we can connect.